All right, soulmates, they say a delay is not a denial. And after a delay of nearly 6 decades, one of the first black officers in the Green Berets will receive the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest combat decoration for his heroism in Vietnam.
Yeah, it kind of started to feel like a denial for a minute, but 2 years ago, Davis's story about how his Medal of Honor paperwork mysteriously vanished back in 1965 at the height of the Civil Rights Movement first aired on CBS this morning. Now, after 2 years of advocacy and awareness, President Joe Biden on Monday personally called retired Colonel Paris Davis to deliver the news, informing him that he will now receive the Medal of Honor for his, quote, remarkable heroism during the Vietnam War. That's according to a White House statement.
Only 8% of Medal of Honor recipients from Vietnam are black. And so this is a huge honor, an honor that is long delayed but well deserved.
All right. Now, according to a new Lumina Foundation Gallup study, more black college students compared to their non-black counterparts must balance classwork while competing with outside responsibilities such as a full-time job and caregiving. The study found that 20% of black students must work full-time jobs compared to only 11% of non-black students. This is leading to 46% of black students considering dropping out of their bachelor's programs. The study also suggests schools integrate flexibility for time and location of courses, as well as offer comprehensive support services like on-campus childcare and financial assistance.
Double click on that financial assistance. I remember when I was in college, I interned, not full-time, but part-time. And so I worked every year while I was in college, and I could have used a study like this to make the case for how I needed more support from financial aid, but we did all right. Moving along, the University of Louisville's men and women's basketball teams plan on celebrating Black History Month by wearing special uniforms to honor Black excellence, heritage, and the motherland. That's right, the well thought out special Adidas uniform featuring a theme of cream colors and golden flowers to mimic goldenrods, which is the state flower of Kentucky. The cream color is a nod to cream of the planet, referring to Africa's abundance of natural resources like diamonds and gold, platinum, cocoa, and ivory, just to name a few. The uniforms are meant to show respect to Black influencers, giving them their flowers while they're still here. Now, according to a news release, fans will also be able to purchase these shirts. And so, you know, I'm going to log on to the Google and get me a shirt.
So let's flip the coin here and go to Arkansas, where that district's superintendent is apologizing to community members for the district's handling of a situation last week regarding the use of Black History Month t-shirts by athletic coaches. Now, over the weekend, there was a report that came out on social media alleging that the superintendent of Conway Public Schools, quote, issued a directive prohibiting its coaches from wearing attire at school athletic events that mention celebrate Black history. Now, that's a statement that was issued by the Faulkner County for Social Justice. Now, the statement added that the superintendent did not think it was appropriate for Conway coaches to wear attire that expressed support for groups that resemble a cult.
Resembled a cult?
That's what the man said. That's what he said.
Stop it. A cult? Is that what we're calling Black Lives Matter? So if you're calling Black Lives Matter a cult, then what are you calling the insurrectionists at the Capitol? What do you call them? Because they're not patriots. So what would you call them? That's okay, Mr. Superintendent. We're waiting. We want to hear. You can call me up right here at FOXSOUL's Black Report. I want to hear from you.
I would call them idiots for them to think that they can storm this Capitol. Well, you know what? Some of them have gotten away with it. You know, there's this back and forth of you know, what it was and what it wasn't. You know, there's also talk within our culture, if it was us, how it probably would have been handled very, very differently. So it goes back to this old adage that I used to hear my parents say, the thought that white is right. And, you know, we just, as Black folks, have to continue to dismantle that and press forward and move on. And we know that Black lives matter. And but listen, this is what you're still going to continue to get. So I think it's very key to stand your ground and stand your ground and think about how you're going to move forward. Despite we've always had to deal with somewhat of a struggle, and we always maintain and we always survive it and we always keep it moving.
Yeah, but
this
Courtney,
is no different. Some
Courtney,
things
wait a minute. Courtney,
some things you just can't let bother you.
Courtney, this bothers.
But I'm not saying this superintendent should get away with it.
I think it bothers a lot. It bothers a lot of people that are watching.
And if the coaches really feel the way they feel, wear the T-shirt. You can go find another coach's job somewhere else.
If these coaches feel the way they feel, they shouldn't be coaching. What are you teaching our kids? You just compared Black Lives Matter, a movement, a racial justice movement, to a cult. Well, this is what and you are in a place of learning.
Well,
right?
he told his coaches they couldn't wear it.
This is at a school.
But if in fact there are coaches who choose to wear it or would want to wear it, just take a stand and wear the damn T-shirt. That's all I'm saying. You can go find a coaching job somewhere else.
Last
if this is about,
I checked,
if this is
free
about
speech was our right.
That's my whole point of the coaches putting on the T-shirt. And if this is about mentoring young people, cultivating them and helping them come into a voice of their own, that would be a great example. This coach saying, you know what? I feel this way and I'm going to put on this T-shirt anyway and I'll deal with the consequences.
Well, this is why we celebrate Black history.
You got to get radical.
This is why we celebrate Black history and we will continue to teach Black history. Right? This is why we're going to read banned books, and this is why we're going to do all the things.
That's my whole point.
Right here on FOXSOUL's Black Report, because of nonsense like this, ignorance that is afoot in this country that doesn't make a distinction
Put on a T-shirt
between the insurrectionists on the Capitol and folks that are fighting for racial justice. Courtney, please take this story.
All right. Speaking of Black history, here's what happened today on this day in 1760. We're going way back. Richard Allen, the founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, was born. The AME Church evolved out of the Free American Society at the end of the 18th century in Philadelphia.
That's right, Courtney. The society was a response to the discrimination against Black Methodists who requested aid from the charitable funds of their church. The church has grown to a global membership of around, get this, 2.5 million members and remains one of the largest Methodist denominations in the world.
Today, in 1817, abolitionist, editor, orator, author, statesman Frederick Douglass was born into slavery as Frederick Bale Douglass. He purchased his freedom in 1845 and went on to become the greatest abolitionist of his time. One of his famous quotes, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." That's why I say put on the shirt, put on the T-shirt.
In the year of 1867, Morehouse College was organized in Augusta, Georgia, also the hometown of James Brown. Say it loud, I'm Black and I'm proud. The institution was later moved to Atlanta and has produced many famous and influential graduates, including Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Julian Bond, Maynard Jackson, Spike Lee, Samuel L. Jackson, Pastor Jamal Bryant, civil rights attorney Lee Merritt, activist Shaun King, just to name a few.
Yeah, plenty Morehouse men out here doing some good. All right, on this day in 1961, a member of the popular R&B group Tony was born. Today we celebrate the birthday of Dwayne Wiggins. Tony includes his brother Raphael Sadiq and their cousin Timothy Christian. They are responsible for iconic 90s hits like Feels Good, Whatever You Want, It Never Rains in Southern California, just the entire soundtrack of your 1990s life.
That's right. Also today in 1991, African-American inventor Dr. Lonnie G. Johnson patents the Super Soaker toy that goes on to sell over 40 million units. Did you know it sold 40 million units?
I know that he got ripped off and later on had to go finish the story.
By all means, he sure did. And he made it to the top selling the toy in the U.S. in 1991 and 1992. And those are just some important moments that happened today in Black history.
Yeah, he had to reclaim his invention, his time, his money. As years later, he finally got his just due and was paid for that invention because, they took it from him.
I'm not surprised, but I'm glad that he overcame, right? Now to some Black history in Chicago. It's called the Heritage Water trial.
Here's the story of how this historic site was so important to the Underground Railroad and still is important to many blacks today. Let's take a look.
Right here we are looking at the African American Heritage Water Trail.
On an unusually warm winter day, we meet historian Lillian Holden along the banks of the Little Calumet River, a waterway that flows through hundreds of years of African American history.
It is a 12-mile long water trail that covers at least 2 centuries worth of history, ranging from the Underground Railroad, the Civil Rights Movement, the birth of the environmental justice movement.
In warmer weather, the conservation group Open Lands conducts tours of the history trail by boat.
Every summer, we have a series of river engagements to interpret the history that is associated with the African American Heritage Water Trail.
And a big piece of that history is right here, where a marker has been placed at the corner of 134th Place and St. Lawrence.
We are standing on the Ton Farm site, which is a part of the Underground Railroads.
The Tons were a Dutch immigrant family who owned a farm on the banks of the Little Calumet. Their house became an important stop on the Underground Railroad, hiding and harboring African Americans fleeing slavery in the South.
I'm a retired sergeant with Chicago Police Department.
Ronald Gaines owns Chicago's finest marina, which now sits on the site of the Ton family farm. He says slaves seeking freedom would be taken in covered wagons to Chicago and then on to Detroit so they could escape into Canada.
Even though we don't think of slavery as an issue in Chicago or up north, but you had to be out of the United States to be actually free. So you had to leave the home of the free to be free.
To get to the Ton farm, African Americans would cross the Little Calumet River here, near the Indiana Avenue Bridge. Abolitionist George Dalton, who founded the nearby village bearing his name, operated a ferry that carried the fleeing slaves across the river. Heading west, the historic water trail passes through the village of Robbins, one of the oldest incorporated black communities in the United States. In 1931, Robbins opened the first black-owned airport and flight school, which led to some of the country's most famous war heroes.
It was a pathway to some pilots who have flown as Tuskegee Airmen during World War II.
And for one more piece of African American history, let's go back to Ronald Gaines Marina, which has been on this site for decades and provided a home for black boaters who were often excluded from other boat clubs.
And so people can come out and enjoy and see the south side of Chicago, see the beauty and what we have to offer out here as well.
Has it always looked this nice?
No, it has not always looked this nice.
Adela Bass is a community organizer who's helping to restore the Little Calumet. She grew up in the Alcal Gardens public housing project, steps from the river, and remembers when this old landfill was still in use, leaching poison into the water.
We call it the hills of toxicity.
Now, with the Heritage Water Trail designation, the Little Calumet is coming back to life.
It's a place within a place. It separates you from the city life and gives you a taste of nature. And
brings to life 2 centuries of Chicago black history. Dane Placco, Fox 32 Chicago.
Who knew? I used to live right off the Little Calumet.
Really?
Yes, I did about 12 years in Chicago radio, in particular, little TV. I never knew. That's why, feature stories like that and shows like FOXSOUL's Black Report bringing it to you. That's why Black History Month is important, and that's why just being black and learning what you can 365 is important. I had no idea. I'm familiar with all those suburbs that were mentioned in that piece, and you know what? Even if we have to do a deep dive because they want to erase our history, I think at the end of the day, like we always say, it is on us to know it, to find it, unearth it, discover it, and know it. I had no idea. I bypass the Little Calumet River every single day.
Well, maybe we'll take a road trip there.
Okay.
We keep talking about this road trip. We really need to get on the road.
Mm-hmm.
Up next, almost 4 million views for Black
Yes,
Love.
I'm so excited. We will introduce you to the Griffins, who went viral on TikTok for their love story. They're up next. You're watching FOXSOUL's Black Report.
You don't want to miss it.